Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The fiery descent of Commander Jacqueline reads spacecraft tour through Mevoria's lavender sky like a wounded comet. Warning sirens blared as her navigation systems failed one by one. What had begun as a routine diplomatic mission to the outer colonies had become a desperate fight for survival as her ship plummeted toward the surface of an uncharted planet. Mayday, Mayday, this is Earth Exploration Vessel Sierra 9, systems critical. Requesting immediate assistance, Jacqueline shouted into her communicator, knowing her signal was likely lost in the electromagnetic storms that had knocked her off course. The ship's hull groaned under the strain of atmospheric entry. With sweat beading on her forehead, Jacqueline fought the controls, trying to steer the failing craft toward what appeared to be a clearing in the violet forests below. "Come on, just a little longer," she whispered to her ship. The impact came with a deafening crash. Metal tore against stone as the spacecraft carved a deep trench across the alien landscape. Jacqueline's head slammed against the control panel, and darkness claimed her consciousness. Hours later, through a haze of pain, Jacqueline became aware of gentle hands against her forehead. A melodic voice spoke in a language she couldn't understand. She forced her eyes open to find herself staring into the most extraordinary face she had ever seen. The being leaning over her had luminescent blue skin that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Her eyes, if they were eyes, were large and faceted like gemstones, reflecting prisms of color with every movement. Where hair should be, delicate tendrils floated as if suspended in water, despite the normal gravity Jacqueline could feel pressing her injured body against whatever soft surface she lay upon. Where am I?" Jacqueline managed to croak, her throat raw from smoke inhalation. The alien being tilted her head, clearly not understanding the words. She placed a three-fingered hand against her chest. "Namara," she said, her voice like chimes in a gentle breeze. "Namara," Jacqueline repeated, pointing weakly at the alien. Then, pressing her own hand to her chest, she said, "Jacqueline." The alien's face brightened, literally the blue skin glowing more intensely. "Jha-Quilleen," she attempted, the sounds unfamiliar to her vocal structure. Despite her pain, Jacqueline smiled, close enough. Over the next few days, as Jacqueline's strength returned, she realized she was being kept in what appeared to be a hidden sanctuary. The structure was organic in nature, seeming to have been grown rather than built, with walls that curved and flowed like solidified water. Through translucent sections that served as windows, she could see the violet forest stretching endlessly in all directions. Namara visited frequently, bringing strange but nourishing foods and helping change the bioluminescent bandages that covered Jacqueline's wounds. They developed a rudimentary form of communication, part sign language, part word exchange, and Jacqueline learned that Namara was hiding her presence from others of her kind. On the seventh day, when Jacqueline was strong enough to stand, Namara handed her a device that adhered to her temple. Suddenly, the alien's thoughts flowed into her mind, translated into concepts she could understand. "You must remain hidden," came Namara's first comprehensible message. "The Sovereign would consider you a threat." "The Sovereign?" Jacqueline asked, the device translating her question. "My father," Namara replied, and Jacqueline sensed a complex emotion accompanying the word, respect, fear, and something like resignation. "He rules Mevoria. Our world has been isolated by choice for generations. No outsider has set foot here in centuries." "Then why help me?" Jacqueline asked, genuinely curious. "Why risk his anger?" Namara's tendrils rippled in what Jacqueline was beginning to recognize as emotional expression. "Because the old ways are not always the right ways, because I have studied the stars and believe we should rejoin the galactic community." Her gemstone eyes seemed to darken. "And because even the Sovereign's daughter is permitted some secrets." Jacqueline's eyes widened. "Your royalty." "I am to be the next sovereign," Namara confirmed. "My ascension ceremony is in one cycle of our largest moon. After that, I will be bound by even more traditions and restrictions." Her thoughts carried a wistfulness that transcended the translation. "These days with you may be my last taste of freedom." As Jacqueline recovered further, Namara began taking her on short expeditions outside the sanctuary during Mevoria's night hours. The world was a bioluminescent wonder, plants that sang when touched, crystal formations that responded to thought, and creatures that seemed to exist partially in another dimension, phasing in and out of visibility. During one such excursion, they stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley where floating islands drifted languidly above a sea of mist. The three moons of Mevoria cast different colored lights across the landscape, gold, silver, and a deep crimson. "It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen," Jacqueline said truthfully. "Yet you wish to return to your stars," Namara replied, not a question but an observation. "I have duties, responsibilities," Jacqueline explained. people who depend on me. As do I, Namara's thoughts came tinged with sadness. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to choose my own path. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant humming. Namara's tendrils stiffened in alarm. Sentinels, she whispered into Jacqueline's mind. My father's guards patrol at irregular intervals. We must return. They hurried back toward the sanctuary, but the humming grew louder. A beam of intense light swept the forest floor ahead of them. Namara pulled Jacqueline into a hollow beneath the massive roots of a tree just as three hovering craft passed overhead. Pressed close together in the confined space, Jacqueline could feel Namara's heart beating rapidly against her own chest, or what served as a heart in her alien physiology. The proximity awakened something unexpected in Jacqueline, a connection that went beyond their tentative friendship. They're searching for something, Namara communicated. This is not a routine patrol. Could they be looking for me for my ship? Jacqueline asked, suddenly fearful. Perhaps the crash would have been detected by our atmospheric sensors. Namara's grip on Jacqueline's arm tightened. If they find evidence of you, my father will order a planet-wide search. When the sentinels finally passed, they emerged from hiding and rushed back to the sanctuary. As they entered, Namara's tendrils were rippling with agitation. You cannot stay here, she declared. My father will find you eventually. We must repair your ship and get you off-world before my ascension. Is that even possible? Jacqueline asked. My communicator is destroyed. I have no way to call for help. Namara's gem-like eyes seemed to shine with determination. I have studied the technology of other worlds in secret. Together, we might succeed where either of us alone would fail. As Namara spoke, Jacqueline realized that their fates had become intertwined in ways neither could have foreseen. A human commander and an alien princess, both bound by duty but yearning for something more. Little did they know that their collaboration to repair the ship would forge a bond stronger than either had experienced before. A connection that would soon challenge the very foundations of Mevorian society and test the limits of what both were willing to sacrifice for love. The wreckage of Jacqueline's ship sat half-buried in Mevorian soil, its once sleek hull now a tangle of twisted metal. Under the cover of night, Namara had led Jacqueline back to the crash site, using pathways known only to the royal family to avoid the increased patrols. The damage is worse than I feared, Jacqueline said, running her hand along the fractured hull. Her heart sank as she assessed the extensive destruction. The propulsion system was completely destroyed, the communication array shattered beyond recognition. But not impossible, Namara replied, her thoughts conveying confidence she didn't entirely feel. Her tendrils undulated slowly as she examined the alien technology. My people have materials that could replace some of these components. For 3 cycles of Mevoria's Crimson Moon, they worked in secret. By day, Namara attended her royal duties and preparations for her ascension ceremony. By night, she smuggled materials from the royal archives and laboratories, bringing them to Jacqueline at the ship. One night, as they worked side by side beneath the glow of the 3 moons, Jacqueline paused to watch Namara. The alien princess had an intuitive understanding of mechanics that surprised the human commander. Her luminescent fingers moved with precision as she fused a Mevorian crystal to Earth technology, creating a hybrid circuit that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. How did you learn all this? Jacqueline asked, genuinely impressed. Namara's skin pulsed with what Jacqueline had come to recognize as mild embarrassment. I have accessed forbidden archives, the history of our contact with other worlds before isolation. My father believes such knowledge corrupts our purity, but I've always been curious. Curious enough to risk his displeasure. I have been a disappointment to the sovereign in many ways, Namara admitted, her thoughts tinged with old pain. I question traditions he holds sacred. I believe isolation has weakened us, not protected us. As they continued their work, Jacqueline found herself sharing stories of Earth, of the united human colonies, of the vast interstellar community that Mevoria had withdrawn from centuries ago. Namara absorbed every detail, her gem-like eyes widening at tales of worlds and species she had only read about in secret. Your life has such freedom, Namara observed as dawn approached, to travel among the stars to make your own choices. Jacqueline laughed softly. Military service isn't exactly freedom. I follow orders just like you. But you chose that path, Namara countered. I was born to mine. Their conversations deepened with each passing night. Jacqueline learned of Mevorian customs, of the sacred connection the people had with their living world, of the spiritual significance of the 3 moons. Namara described the ceremony that would bind her life force to the planet itself, making her truly sovereign. After ascension, I will never be able to leave Mevoria, she explained one night as they took a brief rest from their repairs. My essence will be woven into the planetary consciousness. That sounds intense, Jacqueline replied, struggling to comprehend such a profound commitment. It is our way, Namara said simply, but without the conviction a future sovereign should possess. As the ship's repairs progressed, so did the connection between them. It began subtly, lingering glances, the brush of fingers during tool exchanges, shared moments of triumph when a system came back online. Jacqueline found herself mesmerized by the graceful movement of Namara's tendrils, the way her skin shimmered when she experienced strong emotions. For Namara, it was Jacqueline's resilience that first drew her admiration, then something deeper. The human's determination, her adaptability, her acceptance of Namara's alien nature without judgment. These qualities awakened feelings the princess had never experienced with any potential mate from her own world. 2 nights before the ascension ceremony, they finally restored partial power to the ship's communication array. As the system hummed to life, Jacqueline felt a bittersweet surge of hope. If she could send a distress signal, rescue might come, but it would also mean leaving Mevoria, leaving Namara. We did it, Jacqueline whispered, staring at the flickering console lights. Yes, Namara agreed, her thought voice oddly subdued. You can call your people now. Jacqueline looked up, suddenly aware of the tension in Namara's posture, the dimming of her usually vibrant skin. What's wrong? This is what we've been working toward. Of course, Namara replied too quickly. It is necessary for your return. Without thinking, Jacqueline reached out, placing her hand against Namara's face. The alien's skin was cool to the touch, with a subtle vibration like a purr. I don't want to leave you, she admitted, surprising herself with the raw honesty of her words. Namara's eyes shifted through a spectrum of colors. And I do not want you to go, she confessed, her tendrils reaching forward to gently wrap around Jacqueline's wrist. But what choice do we have? Your world is among the stars, mine is here, bound to this planet. Maybe there's another way, Jacqueline suggested, her mind racing with possibilities, none of them practical. Maybe I could stay or… The sovereign would never permit an outsider to remain, Namara interrupted gently. And I cannot abandon my duties to my people. The reality of their situation hung heavy between them. Two beings from different worlds, different species, drawn together by circumstance but separated by duty. In the silence that followed, Jacqueline made a decision. She leaned forward slowly, giving Namara time to pull away if she wished. When she didn't, Jacqueline pressed her lips gently against what served as Namara's mouth, a small, sensitive area where her facial luminescence was most concentrated. The contact created an unexpected resonance between them. Through the translation device, Jacqueline felt a surge of Namara's emotions, wonder, desire, fear, hope, all intermingled in a complex symphony. For Namara, it was her first experience of human affection, intense and direct in a way Mevorian interaction never was. When they finally separated, Namara's entire body was glowing with an intensity that illuminated the ship's interior. That was, she began, struggling to find words. A kiss, Jacqueline supplied, her voice husky. On Earth, it's how we express certain feelings. We have no equivalent, Namara admitted, but I would like to learn more of this human custom. Their second kiss deepened, transcending the biological differences between them. In that moment, the barriers of species and culture seemed insignificant compared to the connection they had formed. As the night progressed, they shared more than repair work and conversation. They explored the strange new territory between human and Mevorian intimacy, different in form but similar in emotional impact. Their bodies found ways to communicate that required no translation device. Later, as they lay intertwined beneath the open hatch of the ship, watching Mevoria's 3 moons through the trees, reality reasserted itself. The ascension ceremony is the day after tomorrow, Namara said, her thoughts somber. Once completed, my father will assign me a Mevorian consort from one of the noble lineages. And I'll be long gone by then, Jacqueline added, trying to keep the pain from her voice. Namara's tendrils tightened around Jacqueline's fingers. Unless… Unless what? There is an ancient provision in our laws, Namara explained hesitantly. If a sovereign-to-be chooses a mate before ascension, that choice supersedes all arrangements. Jacqueline sat up, her heart racing. Are you suggesting? It has never been invoked for an off-worlder, Namara continued. My father would resist, the council would be outraged. But is it possible? Technically, yes, Namara confirmed. But it would require you to stay on Mevoria permanently, to become part of our world in ways I cannot fully explain, and it would require me to defy centuries of tradition. Jacqueline looked into Namara's gemstone eyes, seeing in them a reflection of her own longing. What had begun as survival, then cooperation, had blossomed into something neither had expected, something that now threatened to reshape both their futures. Your father would never agree, Jacqueline whispered. No, Namara acknowledged. He would not, which means I would have to fight for it for us. The enormity of what they were considering hung in the air between them. A human and an alien princess, contemplating a union that would challenge the fundamental order of an entire civilization. Before either could say more, a distant alarm sounded from the direction of the city. Namara's tendrils stiffened in alarm. The royal sanctuary has been breached, she explained, already rising. My absence has been discovered. As they gathered their tools hastily, the sound of sentinel craft grew louder over the forest. A searchlight swept the trees nearby. Run, Namara urged, pushing Jacqueline toward the deeper woods. Hide in our sanctuary. I must return and explain my absence before they find you here. But the ship is not worth your life, Namara insisted. Go now. As they prepared to part, Namara pressed something into Jacqueline's hand, a small crystal that pulsed with the same rhythm as Namara's heart. Whatever happens, keep this with you. It contains part of me. With one final, desperate embrace, they separated, Jacqueline disappearing into the forest shadows while Namara composed herself to face her father's wrath. Neither knew if they would ever see the other again, or if their brief connection would be all they ever shared. Dawn broke over Mevoria with an unsettling crimson glow. The grand spires of the royal citadel pierced the morning mist, their crystalline surfaces refracting light in rippling patterns across the central plaza. Jacqueline crouched in the secret chamber beneath Namara's personal quarters, her heart pounding as voices echoed through the floor above. After fleeing the crash site, she had made her way to their sanctuary only to find it compromised. With nowhere else to go, she had risked everything to infiltrate the citadel using the hidden passages Namara had once described. Now she waited, straining to hear what transpired above. Your behavior is inexcusable. The voice belonged to Sovereign Thalador, Namara's father. Even muffled, his rage vibrated through the floor. Night after night you have disappeared, the sacred preparation rituals ignored, and for what? Father, I can explain, Namara began, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Explain, a heavy object crashed against a wall. The Sentinels tracked you to the impact site of an alien vessel. Do you deny consorting with an off-worlder? Silence followed, Jacqueline held her breath. I deny nothing, Namara finally replied, her tone shifting from defensive to resolute. The human crashed here by accident. I have been helping her repair her ship. Helping? Thalador's voice dropped dangerously low. Do you realize what you've done? Contact with outsiders is forbidden. The corruption of their technology, their ideas, this is precisely what our ancestors sought to protect us from. Protection that has become isolation, Father. Isolation that has become stagnation. Namara's tendrils would be rippling with emotion now, Jacqueline knew. We were once part of a greater community of worlds. We could be again. Blasphemy, Thalador hissed. The human has poisoned your mind with these notions. No, Father, these beliefs were mine long before Jacqueline arrived. The sound of her name spoken aloud sent a chill down Jacqueline's spine. She pressed herself against the wall, wishing she could see Namara's face, offer her some support. Jacqueline, Thalador repeated the name as if it were a disease. You speak it with such familiarity. Tell me, daughter, has this corruption gone beyond ideas? Have you developed attachments? Another pause. Jacqueline closed her eyes, knowing what Namara's honest answer would mean for both of them. I love her, fathers. The words hung in the air, a declaration and a challenge. Impossible, Thalador roared. She is not even of our kind. This is not love. It is contamination of your essence, a sickness of the mind that threatens everything we hold sacred. It is not for you to define what I feel, Namara countered, her voice gaining strength. And according to the ancient laws, as sovereign to be, I have the right to choose my consort before ascension. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the shouting. When Thalador spoke again, his voice was coldly controlled. You would invoke the right of selection for an alien. I would, I do. Footsteps paced the floor above. This human cannot possibly understand what such a union would mean. The sharing of life essence, the binding to our world's consciousness. Her biology is incompatible. It would likely kill her. That is my concern and hers, Namara replied, not yours. You are wrong, daughter. As sovereign, everything on Mevoria is my concern. His voice hardened. The human will be found and removed from our world. If she resists, she will be eliminated. Father, no. And you will proceed with the ascension ceremony tomorrow, after which you will be joined with Prelator Zendrix, as has been arranged since your birth. I refuse, Namara stated simply. Then you leave me no choice. Thalador's voice became formal, ritualistic. By the power vested in me as sovereign of Mevoria, I hereby issue this ultimatum. Either you renounce this human and fulfill your sacred duty to our world, or you will be stripped of your birthright and exiled from the royal lineage forever. Jacqueline's blood ran cold. Exile for Namara would mean disgrace, the loss of everything she had been raised to become. You have until midnight to deliver the human to the High Council chambers, Thalador continued. If you do so, demonstrating your loyalty to Mevoria above all else, your indiscretion will be forgiven. If not, your name will be struck from the ancestral records and your sister Vylara will ascend in your place. Heavy footsteps moved toward the door, then paused. Do not test me in this, Namara. Not even a father's love can supersede my duty to our world and our ways. The door slammed, and seconds later, Jacqueline heard the soft sound of Namara crumpling to the floor above. Moving quickly, she activated the hidden mechanism that connected the chamber to Namara's quarters and emerged to find the princess kneeling in the center of the room, her luminescence dimmed to almost nothing. Namara, Jacqueline whispered, rushing to her side. I heard everything. The alien princess looked up, surprise briefly brightening her features before sorrow dimmed them again. You should not be here. The entire citadel will be searching for you. I couldn't leave you to face him alone, Jacqueline said, taking Namara's cool hands in her own. Not after what you risked for me. Namara's faceted eyes cycled through muted colors. Now you understand the choice before us, before me. It's no choice at all, Jacqueline said firmly. I'll turn myself in. I won't let you lose everything for me. No, Namara's tendrils wrapped around Jacqueline's wrists with surprising strength. That would mean your death. My father spoke truth about one thing: outsiders who witness our world are never permitted to leave with that knowledge. Those who cannot be assimilated are removed. Jacqueline felt the blood drain from her face. Then we both leave. My signal reached my ship. Eventually someone will come looking. And I would wither away from Mevoria, my life force bound to this world even without the ascension. Namara's tendrils drooped. Besides, there is nowhere in the galaxy we could hide where my father's agents would not eventually find us. They sat in silence, the impossible weight of their situation pressing down upon them. Outside, the sounds of Sentinel craft grew louder as the search intensified. Finally, Namara spoke, her thought voice so quiet Jacqueline could barely perceive it through the translator. There is a third option, one my father did not consider. What is it? I could challenge the ultimatum before the full council of elders. Namara's eyes began to brighten with determination. Not in secret, not in the private chambers, but in the grand forum where all citizens may witness. Is that allowed? It is ancient and rarely invoked, but yes. Namara stood, her posture straightening. A sovereignty has the right to appeal directly to the people when they believe the current sovereign has acted against the true spirit of our laws. Hope flickered in Jacqueline's chest. And you think the council would side with you against your father? Not initially, no. Namara's tendrils began to undulate with increasing energy. But if I can make them understand, make them see you as I do, perhaps some might be swayed. They would need to see me, Jacqueline pointed out, which means exposing myself to capture. Yes, Namara took Jacqueline's face between her hands. It would be dangerous, perhaps foolish. But I believe our connection exists for a reason, Jacqueline. Perhaps this is how Mevoria finally rejoins the greater community of worlds, through love, not politics or technology. The human commander stared into those alien eyes that had become so dear to her. What do we need to do? First, we must reach the Temple of Ancestors. There is a ritual I must perform to formally invoke the challenge. Namara moved to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a compartment containing ceremonial garments. Then, we make our case before the entirety of Mevorian society and hope that centuries of tradition can be overcome by the truth of what we feel. As Namara prepared for the ritual, gathering sacred crystals and donning robes of state, Jacqueline watched her with a mixture of admiration and fear. She had come to this world by accident, expecting to find only strange landscapes and alien biology. Instead, she had found something far more precious and far more dangerous. Tell me honestly, Jacqueline said as Namara completed her preparations. What are our chances? Namara paused, her tendrils momentarily still. In all recorded history, no challenge to a sovereign's ultimatum has ever succeeded. Oh, Jacqueline swallowed hard, so we're making history either way. Indeed, Namara's skin pulsed with a faint glow of amusement despite the gravity of their situation. But no challenger has ever had what we have. And what's that? A love that transcends worlds, Namara extended her hand. Are you ready to fight for us? Jacqueline took the offered hand, feeling the strange, wonderful resonance that always occurred when they touched. Lead the way, princess. Together they slipped into the secret passages that honeycomb the citadel, moving toward an uncertain future. Behind them, Thalador's sentinels combed the royal quarters, unaware that their quarry was already gone, and that before the next dawn, the foundations of Mevorian society would be shaken to their core. The grand forum of Mevoria stretched like a vast amphitheater beneath the dome of the Temple of Ancestors. Thousands of Mevorians filled the spiral tiers, their luminescent bodies creating a living tapestry of light and color. At the center stood the council dais, 13 stone pedestals arranged in a perfect circle, where the elders now gathered with expressions of shock and outrage. Sovereign Thalador occupied the highest pedestal, his royal mantle billowing around him, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Beside him stood a tall, severe-looking Mevorian male, Prelator Zendrix, Nimara's intended consort. Jacqueline realized with a surge of jealousy. Hidden in an antechamber behind the ceremonial curtains, Jacqueline and Nimara prepared for their entrance. The ritual invocation had been completed hours earlier, sending shockwaves through the citadel and summoning all citizens to witness the unprecedented challenge. "Remember," Nimara whispered, adjusting the translation device at Jacqueline's temple, "speak only when directly addressed by the council. Our customs are strict regarding audience participation in these proceedings." Jacqueline nodded, her mouth dry with apprehension. What if they refuse to acknowledge me at all? They must. The challenge has been properly invoked. Nimara's tendrils trembled slightly. "Are you certain you wish to proceed? There is still time for you to hide to seek your ship. I could create a distraction." "No," Jacqueline interrupted firmly. "We do this together or not at all." The sound of ceremonial chimes echoed through the chamber. Nimara squared her shoulders. "That is our summons." They stepped through the curtains together, and a collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Thousands of faceted eyes turned to stare at the human who walked beside their princess. Whispers like wind through crystal chimes filled the forum. "Silence," Thalador commanded, his voice amplified by the chamber's natural acoustics. "Nimara, daughter of my lineage, you have invoked the ancient right of challenge against my ultimatum. Step forward and state your case." Nimara moved to the center of the forum, her ceremonial robes trailing behind her. Jacqueline remained a step behind, aware of the hostility emanating from many in the audience. "Sovereign and council," Nimara began, her voice clear and strong, "I stand before you to challenge the ultimatum issued against my chosen consort and myself. The laws of Mevoria grant me the right to select my own partner before ascension. I have made my choice." She gestured toward Jacqueline. "I choose Commander Jacqueline Reed of Earth, who came to our world by accident but whose presence I believe is destined." Murmurs of disbelief swept through the crowd. One of the elders, an ancient female with pale, almost translucent skin, leaned forward. "The law speaks of choice among Mevorians, child, not aliens, not creatures whose very presence violates our sacred isolation." "With respect, Elder Thyria," Nimara countered, "the original text makes no such specification. It states only that the sovereignty may choose one whose heart resonates with their own." "Resonance requires compatibility," Prelator Zendrix interjected, stepping forward. "This human's biology cannot sustain the joining ritual. She lacks the neural pathways to connect with our planetary consciousness." "That is conjecture," Nimara replied coolly. "No such attempt has ever been made." "Because it would be suicide for the off-worlder," another elder shouted, "and potentially catastrophic for our entire collective consciousness." Sovereign Thalador raised his hand for silence. "My daughter speaks partly true. The ancient law does not explicitly forbid an off-world consort because such a possibility was unimaginable to our ancestors." His eyes narrowed. "But the spirit of the law is clear, to strengthen Mevoria through suitable union." "And how does isolation strengthen us, Father?" Nimara challenged. "Our technological advancement has stagnated, our cultural evolution has ceased, we preserve traditions without questioning their purpose." "You go too far," Thalador warned. "This is not a debate on our way of life." "But it is," Nimara's skin brightened with emotion. "Because that is what you truly fear, not that Jacqueline is incompatible, but that her ideas, her different perspective might change us, might force us to grow." The audience stirred uncomfortably. Jacqueline could sense the tension in the room shifting, some faces showing curiosity now rather than just hostility. "Let the human speak," called a voice from the upper tiers. "If she would be consort to our future sovereign, let her prove her worth." Other voices joined in agreement until Thalador reluctantly nodded. "Very well, step forward, human, and address the council." Jacqueline moved to stand beside Nimara, acutely aware of thousands of alien eyes upon her. The translation device hummed against her temple, ensuring her words would be understood. People of Mevoria, she began, her commander's training steadying her voice, I did not come to your world by choice, but I have remained by choice. Not just because of my crashed ship, but because I found something here I never expected, someone who completes me despite all our differences. She looked directly at Thalador. Sovereign, I understand your fear. On Earth, we too have feared the unknown, feared change, but isolation is not protection, it's slow death. The universe is vast and filled with wonders, and no species thrives by turning away from it. Pretty words, Zendrix sneered, but they do not address the practical impossibility of what you propose. The consort bonding would destroy your mind. Maybe, Jacqueline acknowledged. Or maybe not. I've studied your physiology through Namara. Your neural pathways operate on frequencies that might be compatible with human brainwaves. The risk is mine to take. And the risk to Mevoria? Elder Tharia asked. If the bonding fails, the damage could ripple through our collective consciousness. Before Jacqueline could respond, a new voice spoke from the crowd. I have calculated those risks. All eyes turned to see a younger Mevorian male stepping forward, his skin patterned with the markings of the scientific caste. Healer Jorvin, Thalador acknowledged with surprise. You have insight on this matter. I do, Sovereign. The healer moved to the center of the forum. Since learning of the human's presence, I have been conducting theoretical simulations. While there are indeed risks, they are not as catastrophic as feared. The human's neural plasticity is remarkable. Adaptation is possible. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Namara's tendrils rippled with hope. Furthermore, Jorvin continued, there would be benefits. The genetic diversity alone would strengthen the royal lineage against the cellular degradation we've observed in recent generations. Degradation, someone called from the audience. What degradation? Elder Thyria shifted uncomfortably. This is not the forum for such discussions. But it should be, Namara seized the moment. The Council has known for generations that our genetic pool is shrinking, that each passing cycle brings more sterility, more congenital flaws. Yet we maintain our isolation, refusing the very diversity that might save us. The forum erupted into chaotic discussion. Jacqueline watched as the unified opposition began to fracture, some elders nodding thoughtfully, others arguing vehemently among themselves. Thalador slammed his ceremonial staff against the stone, restoring order. Even if, the biological concerns could be addressed, there remains the matter of tradition, of the sacred isolation that has protected our ways for centuries. Traditions evolve, Father, Namara said softly. They must, or they become chains rather than foundations. She stepped forward, and in a gesture that shocked the assembly, removed her ceremonial robes. Underneath, she wore a simple shift that left her arms bare, revealing something no one had noticed before, patterns on her skin that exactly matched Jacqueline's tribal tattoos. My body has already begun adapting to her, Namara explained as gasps echoed through the chamber. Our connection is not merely emotional or intellectual, it is cellular. The resonance has already begun. Even Thalador appeared stunned. This is unprecedented. As is her challenge, Jacqueline added, stepping forward to take Namara's hand. Their skin glowed where they touched, visible to everyone. But perhaps that's exactly what Mevoria needs now, something unprecedented to break centuries of stagnation. A long silence fell over the forum. Elders conferred in hushed tones. Citizens leaned forward in anticipation. Finally, Elder Tharia spoke. The challenge has merit, she said slowly. And while I cannot endorse abandoning our ways entirely, perhaps, a controlled reopening to the galaxy might be considered, beginning with this union if it can truly succeed. Other elders began to nod in reluctant agreement. There must be safeguards, one insisted. Tests to ensure compatibility, added another. Thalador remained silent, his expression unreadable as he studied his daughter and the human who had changed everything. Finally, he raised his hand, commanding attention. Namara, daughter of my lineage, he began formally, you have challenged my ultimatum with courage and conviction. The Council finds merit in your arguments. Hope bloomed on Namara's face, her skin brightening. However, Thalador continued, such a union cannot be approved without proof of true compatibility. Therefore, I propose a modified joining trial. If the human can successfully form the preliminary bond without harm to either herself or our collective consciousness, the Council will recognize her as your chosen consort. Murmurs of surprise filled the forum. The joining trial was typically a formality between compatible Mevorians. For a human to attempt it was almost unthinkable. And if she fails, Namara asked cautiously. Then she must leave our world forever, Thalador replied, and you must fulfill your duty as arranged. Jacqueline squeezed Namara's hand. I'll do it. The risk is worth taking for you, Jacqueline finished. The trial was set for dawn the following day. As they left the forum, surrounded by curious whispers and watchful guards, Namara explained what lay ahead. The preliminary bond connects surface thoughts and emotions. It's the first stage of the full consort bonding that would happen after ascension. Will it hurt? Jacqueline asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. It is intense, Namara admitted. Even for Mavorians, for you it will be unlike anything you've experienced. That night in the safety of Namara's chambers, they held each other close, neither speaking of the possibility of failure. Instead, they shared memories, hopes, dreams, strengthening a connection that would soon be tested beyond anything they could imagine. Dawn came too quickly. The joining chamber was ancient, carved from living crystal that hummed with planetary energy. Thalador and the council watched from elevated platforms as Namara and Jacqueline were positioned on either side of the resonance pool, a shallow basin filled with luminescent liquid. Be brave, Namara whispered as attendants removed Jacqueline's translator and prepared her forehead with ritual markings. Remember, our connection already exists. The trial merely formalizes it. Jacqueline nodded, unable to speak as anxiety closed her throat. All around them, the chamber began to pulse with energy as the ritual commenced. Immerse, the ritual master commanded. Together, they lowered their hands into the glowing liquid. Immediately, Jacqueline felt a tingling sensation that rapidly intensified into burning pain. She gasped, instinctively trying to withdraw, but Namara's eyes caught hers, pleading for trust. Gritting her teeth, Jacqueline pushed through the pain. Colors exploded behind her eyes as the liquid seemed to crawl up her arms, seeping into her very cells. The chamber began to spin, reality fragmenting around her. Then suddenly, contact. Namara's consciousness touched hers, not through the translator but directly mind to mind. The sensation was overwhelming, alien yet intimately familiar. Jacqueline's entire life flashed before her childhood academy training first command, while simultaneously experiencing fragments of Namara's royal upbringing, her secret studies, her loneliness. The pain transformed into something else, neither pleasure nor pain but pure connection. Their consciousnesses intertwined, forming patterns that rippled outward through the chamber. From a distance, she heard gasps of astonishment. The liquid in the pool had changed color, forming a swirling pattern never before seen in a joining trial. Impossible, someone whispered. Beautiful, breathed another. The ritual master's voice broke through her trance. The bond forms true, the resonance patterns are stable. Jacqueline became aware of tears streaming down her face. Across the pool, Namara's tendrils waved in patterns of pure joy, her entire body radiant with light. Sovereign Thalador stepped forward, his expression a complex mixture of emotions, surprise, concern, and something that might have been reluctant admiration. The trial confirms compatibility, he announced formally. The challenge is upheld. The council chambers erupted in exclamations of wonder and disbelief. Attendants helped Jacqueline from the pool, her legs wobbly as the intensity of the experience lingered in her mind. You did it, Namara whispered, embracing her. You actually did it. As the implications of their success spread through the chamber, Elder Thyria approached, her ancient face solemn. In all our recorded history, no non-Mavorian has ever formed a successful bond, she said quietly. Perhaps there is wisdom in reconsidering other traditions as well. Over the days that followed, the citadel buzzed with activity. Preparations for Namara's ascension ceremony continued, but with significant modifications. Word of the successful joining trial spread throughout Mavorian society, causing debate and excitement in equal measure. On the morning of the ascension, Jacqueline stood beside Namara before the entire assembled population. The ceremony was broadcast to every corner of the planet, the first step in Thalador's reluctant concession to greater transparency. Citizens of Mavoria, Namara addressed the crowd, her voice steady and strong, today marks not just my ascension but the beginning of a new era for our world. An era where tradition and innovation exist in harmony, where isolation gives way to careful connection. She turned to Jacqueline, taking her hand. In Commander Jacqueline Reed, I have found not just a consort, but a bridge between worlds. Through our bond, Mavoria will rejoin the galactic community, not in haste, but with wisdom and purpose. Thalador stepped forward, placing the ancestral circlet upon Namara's brow. His expression remained stern, but something had softened in his eyes. The path you choose is untested, daughter, he said, loud enough for only those closest to hear. But perhaps that is what our world needs now. As the formal words of ascension were spoken and the planetary consciousness accepted its new sovereign, Jacqueline felt the bond between herself and Namara deepen and strengthen. Through it flowed not just their love for each other, but a shared vision for the future, one where differences became strengths and isolation gave way to understanding. Later, as twilight painted Mevoria's sky in shades of violet and gold, the newly ascended sovereign and her human consort stood on the highest terrace of the citadel, looking toward the stars. I need to send a message to Earth eventually, Jacqueline said softly. Let them know I'm alive, and that I won't be coming back. We will, Namara promised. And more than a message, an invitation, the first official diplomatic contact between Mevoria and Earth in 5 centuries. Jacqueline smiled, still marveling at how her life had changed. A routine mission, a crash landing, and now she stood beside the ruler of an alien world, bound to her in ways that transcended physical differences. Not exactly how I expected my career to go, she joked. Namara's tendrils caressed her face gently. The universe has strange ways of bringing together those who are meant to find each other. As the first of Mevoria's 3 moons rose above the horizon, they sealed their new beginning with a kiss that bridged worlds, species, and traditions, proof that love, in its purest form, recognizes no boundaries.